Hi, it's Garth Williams here, Professor of Real Estate with the Real Estate Investment Club. Today we're going to be talking about investors and how they like to interact in the market. And today we have Bruce Smith with us from Casb Management. Welcome.
Thank you, Garth.
So there's some real challenges in buying investment property, Bruce. How do you see that? What is your thoughts on investment properties?
Well, I do find it very challenging to find investment properties, and that's why I really rely on the services of a good realtor to help me with that. Maybe you can tell me about some of the things that you help me in terms of me looking for a property.
Well, it's interesting when you say that. In the investment property, there's a lot of issues out there that one has to be aware of. And one of the favorite sayings I like to use is a little bit of real estate information can be somewhat dangerous, even misleading. Lots of information used in an aggregate format is very helpful to establish trends and many other aspects of the investment real estate world. Some of the biggest challenges, of course, are and benefits of a realtor is what we do what's called a CMA, a comparative market analysis.
And that's very important to me because when I'm looking at a property, I want to know what the comparables are, and really I'm basing my decision on what similar type properties have sold for in the past. So without that information, I'm really at a loss as to put a valuation on a particular piece of property.
Well, exactly, and one of the ways we do those comparables, especially in income properties, is we actually compare the income out of the income property. And it's a concept called a cap rate. A cap rate is a straight ratio of how much the property sells for versus how much income comes out of that property. And then there's also something called a net operating income statement. So we don't use gross income, we use net income. The challenges there to the investor are, of course, is it gross income? Is it net income? Well, what part of net income is it? And we get into a whole bunch of concerns about how much has it been renovated and the expense of those renovations being done versus how much of no renovations have been done and the income is high. Do you see any challenges when you start to look at investment properties in those areas?
Well, we'll go back. You talked about cap rates, and cap rates is something I look at. So, for example, if there's net profit on a property of $20,000 and the property they want $200,000 for it, then that's a cap rate of 10%. So I'm obviously looking for the highest cap rate I can find. If it's $25,000 on a $200,000 property, then that's more attractive for me. I'm looking for the highest cap rate I can find. But I'm also concerned about the financials on the property and what's being presented to me in terms of the revenue and expenses. Because I'm a cynical person. I don't believe anything that people tell me. I'm from the show me state, so I'm looking for proof, and I'm often looking for financial records from the previous owner and what the revenue expenses are, because I'm not naive to think that for some reason the year a property is being sold, those expenses always seem to drop. There's never any renovations done and big profit in that last year. So I'm looking for more historic information, and then I can better gauge, what's really happening on that property.
Well, you make a really good point there, Bruce, too, because when we go into this in more detail, the cap rate can vary greatly based on that net operating income statement. And here's the opportunity. In the first few years, normally if you're buying a property, you're going to generate more expenses on renovations, utility expenses perhaps, but improving the property, okay? Whether that's short-term operating expenses or long-term, capital expenses. Then what happens is usually you've got it renovated, then you can drive in higher rents because the place looks nicer, of course. And of course the challenge is that, and the opportunity for sellers, is that in the last couple of years you don't want to necessarily do a heck of a lot of maintenance and renovations because you want the income to be generated higher, which of course is what you were just alluding to, which of course then works out so you have a higher cap rate, so the building looks like it produces more revenue. Of course, when you look at that, what's the challenge for you to whether you really believe those statements or not?
Well, that's why I'm looking for actual tax returns often from the current owner, because I figure what they pay taxes on is going to be probably the realistic numbers, or as close to realistic as we can. So, and that's what I'm relying on you as my realtor to help me go through these numbers and ask the clients for this type of information. They're maybe not going to present it to me, but with Garth asking correctly, they're more likely to provide that information. So I'm really relying on my realtor to help me work through that process, get me the right numbers. Even things like licensing, looking at properties, for example, if they're operating it as a triplex, is it really a legal triplex or is it a legal duplex? And they've got rents that are maybe illegal or because it's not a legal conforming building. And of course, when I'm trying to finance that, I can only finance, if it's a legal duplex, I can only finance it as a duplex. So this extra rent that might be actually coming in applicable to the property, I can't use that as part of my formula for financing. So things like that are important to me.
So one of the things we do as realtors is that we check all of that. We have to do a full disclosure, full due diligence on the property, make sure it complies with city bylaws so that it is a legal duplex or triplex or fourplex. Or great opportunity is it's a legal duplex, but it's in a legally zoned triplex or fourplex area so that you can expand up. Those are one of the kinds of opportunities that work really well. When you talk about expenses, and we go back to the cap rate, the challenge is that in order to establish a cap rate, you have to do this with several different buildings in the area. Well, most buildings don't publish their expenses and their renovation costs. So then the challenge is we have to go back in history and find ones that have been sold and are publicized and are close enough to the size and shape and value of the building, same area, same general amenities, so that we can do a reasonable comparison. And the challenge as a realtor is we have to get several of those, 3, 4, or 5 of them, to establish a cap rate.
Yeah, and the nice thing is I don't have access to that information, so I'm relying solely on the realtor to provide me that information, because I certainly don't have access to prior sales and what happened in the past.
And even realtors have challenge in trying to get some of that, and that's why we have to dig back over time. Some of the challenges there are, have the real expenses been reported? And I relate back to what you're saying. It's very good process to make sure that you go for 2 or 3 years worth of revenue projections and expenses, so you can see the trend of how the building's been managed. Maybe they've not dropped anything into renovations and only jacked up the rents, which makes the price look high to you. But is that really a good investment if the building's been run down and depreciated and not renovated? Well, I would suggest that may not be a good one. So one of the things I say in real estate, and I know you're familiar with this, is that, again, a small amount of information, 1 or 2 items, can be almost downright misleading, if not dangerous, in real estate. To get a lot of information, to get yourself re-educated and up to speed on all the possible options that are out there, and as much detail as you can get, is certainly one of the better positions to stand by. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, 100%.
Okay. Well, that's great. That gives us a little insight to this. This is a very big topic. We'd like to cover this investment real estate purchasing in more detail again. You can find more information on findahomeInLondon.net or Ask the Professor. We would be happy to go into this in more detail and welcome you back again for a second time again, Bruce. And now you know the rest of the story on some investment real estate purchases.